So as I just settle into this moment, and I recognize that this life that is within me right now has always been with me. It is eternal, all-powerful, everywhere, unlimited. It is love. It is the beauty that my senses experience in every moment. It is the connections, the relationships with everything that I love. And because it is all there is, it is the source of everything, that I know that this is what I am. It is living in, as, and through me. It is creating me right now. And in every moment I am new. For it is the in-breath and the out-breath of spirit coming into being. And because that is true for me, I know that it's true for all. Everything is being created and lived through by this one life, this presence of love. And because of this, I know that I am free. I am free from worry and doubt. For in each moment I am taking a step from what was. Any condition, any experience, that next moment, it is all new, full of unlimited possibilities of creation, of that presence living through me. And so I can rest assured that I am guided and showing up right where I need to be, that all that I need is present and available to me. For Spirit is living itself fully, unstoppable. And I'm so grateful for this, grateful for knowing that this is happening in everyone and everything. That everywhere I go, I am meeting the presence, the voice of God, the face of God, the support, the hugs, the gifts of blessing. And so I give myself into this moment to accept and expect my good, for it is God's good. And with this gratitude, I release this, knowing that all of the blessings, all of the treasures, all of the beauty of life is right here, right now. And I simply claim that and release it to that aspect of God that creates it and brings it into being right here and now. And so it is.
This whole year, we've been looking at the idea of a grand rising, creating a grand rising in our lives. Anybody up for a grand rising in your life? Yes. No matter how good it is, could it be better? Yes. No matter how bad it is, could it be better? Okay, well, good. So, and this whole month we're looking at, that's the way we've never done it. Because whatever we've been doing has created whatever we have now, yes? And if we want something different, we have to change. Yes. So today's talk title is called Up Until Now. Okay? See, we all have dysfunctional patterns in our lives. I want you to nudge your neighbor and I want you to look at them and say, I have dysfunctional patterns in my life. And so do you. Which results in either our not living up to our highest and our best selves, yes, and or result in us doing things or letting things be done to us which we later regret. Ooh. Ernest Holmes said, at the center of the human mistake, the human isolation, the thing that thinks it's separate, there is always a sense of guilt, of insecurity, of anxiety, of not being wanted, needed, and loved. Can anybody besides me relate to that? That's when I'm in my stuff, that's what's going on? Yeah. So these patterns and the beliefs that feed them aren't our fault. Look at your neighbor and in your best, most innocent voice go, it's not my fault. See, they're the result of a collective consciousness. We live in this soup of consciousness. Yes? There's a collective consciousness that introduces these limiting beliefs, these ideas to us, and feeds them during our lives. Don Miguel Ruiz in the Four Agreements calls it domestication. Isn't that a lovely term? Don't you feel icky when you think, oh, I've been domesticated? Because we don't even know we're trapped within this set of beliefs or that there are other options. We go along encased in this process, encased in these beliefs, encased in these patterns over and over and over again. Can anybody besides me relate? Okay. You know, you have the same relationship over and over again, different face, same relationship, different job, or same job, different, boss, whatever circumstances. And so we go along encased in these beliefs and these patterns and the results that come out of them until we have, this is for you Matrix fans, a red pill moment. And for those who are not Matrix fans, until you have a look through the looking glass, down the rabbit hole, a wake up, aha, numinous experience moment, an aha moment. Or sometimes it's what I call an stuff moment. Okay? And we suddenly glimpse a reality, a far greater, a far more free reality beyond our current existence than we've ever imagined before, than we ever knew was there. There's many of you are familiar with the idea, Socrates, Plato's cave, anyways, where people are trapped in the cave thinking that they're engaged with the shadows that are being reflected onto the wall. And one of the things he says is you can drag people out of the cave and wake them up in the light. So we have this aha experience, an enlightenment experience, a numinous vision, but so often we go back to sleep. Because Plato also said most people, when you drag them out of the cave and introduce them to the light, will be so uncomfortable in the light that they will run back into the cave. Can anybody besides me relate? Okay. You have a second cousin, right? Not you, but you have a second cousin or a third friend removed, somewhere out there. We run back to sleep. Rumi had the poem that said, "Don't go back to sleep," at the end of his poem. We talked last week. I used the Howard Thurman quote, "The moments of my high resolve, and the moments of the high resolve fade under the dust and grit of the journey." And eventually, we kind of say, "Give me the blue pill. It's easier." Or at least it's familiar. And if you're familiar with the Matrix, you really can't go back. You can't go back. So one of the reasons we take classes, one of the reasons that we come repeatedly to a center like this is to help us to stay awake and remembering. It's why we're here. It's not that we have to find the right class. It's not that there has to be the right minister or the right talk or the right music. It's the a cumulative process of being nudged awake week after week after week. It helps us to keep awake. It helps us to keep that moment of high resolve. And then that begins to create shifts. That begins to create patterns, new patterns in our lives, and we can begin to experience a life that is more free of the collective entanglement that we've been in, so we can lose our littleness and realize that we are immersed in and as something that is so much greater than we were ever told as kids. Yes? And so much greater than what you would say the collective consciousness tells us that we are and there is. In order to do this, we have to break the patterns that we've been involved with. In psychology, it's called a pattern interrupt. Patternus interruptus, as I like to call it. You know, my friend, Reverend Liz Moranti, many of you know her. She's spoken here several times before. Her talk title this morning was Letting God into the Bathroom. You think I'm weird, right? Now, she said, actually, I watched the 9 o'clock service because I had to see how she would handle this morning. But she said it was not all about the loo, but looking at the places where we don't let Spirit into our lives. Ooh. Those places of where we want icky is the word she used. And we don't let Spirit into the icky, but Spirit is in the icky too, right? Because Spirit is everywhere. It's all there is. It's interrupting our patterns and our beliefs about what is and isn't God, which almost all of us have to some degree. Take a breath. So our talk title today, up until now, is an example of a phrase we can use to break out of old habits and old patterns of thinking, of feeling, and acting, and this creates openings for something new to emerge. See, when we do a pattern interrupt, when we stop it, something new can happen. Until we do that, we're going to be just running around the same old track, the same old track, the same old track. Yes? Okay? When we say no more of this, something new can happen. Ideally, something far more in alignment with the magnificent beings we are. Look at your neighbor and say, I am a magnificent being. And so are you. Now, here's the thing. Most of you have found it easier to say, and so are you, because you can see they're magnificent beings. Then we can say, I'm a magnificent being. So say that one more time. I am a magnificent being. Yes. Take that breath. Breathe that in, because that is the truth of you. That is the truth of all of us. Mary Morrissey tells the story of her friend, a woman named Karen Joyce, who was moving from Oregon to Los Angeles. She wanted to be closer to Mary. Mary had moved to LA a couple of years before that. And Karen was looking to buy a home, but while she was buying the home, she was renting a house. And she decided that she was going to live in a wonderful house, and rent a wonderful house to live in, so that she would enjoy the journey as well as the eventual destination. Yes? And so she opened up to that. We have music. Music of the spheres. It's okay. So she wanted to live well while she was looking for a place to buy, and she said she loved it for the first week. She was happy. She connected with the person who owned the house. It had a hot tub in it. It had, it was just a wonderful place. And 7 days after she moved in, she was out doing her regular morning run, and all of a sudden she heard this little voice in the back of her mind going, you're spending $1,000 a month more than you should be spending. And what do you think you are? And who do you think you are? And why don't you be saving that money for the house? Anybody relate? Some of us have that, a voice similar to that about various things. And so she was running along, and she said she heard this. She paid attention to what she was paying attention to. She heard what was being said. And so she stopped in the middle of her run. She stomped her foot, and she said, I interrupt this broadcast with a message from my soul that I am a magnificent being and I deserve a fabulous life. Yes? Yes? Are you magnificent beings? Yes. Do you deserve a fabulous life? Yes. Good. That's a pattern interrupt. That's waking up out of the old ways of thinking based on lack, shame, guilt, all that junk we have, in order to create a new experience. And by the way, she eventually got the wonderful house that she wanted, and she could afford it and all that stuff, okay? So it's just that little chitter chatter in the back of our minds that we all sometimes grow up with. New Thought writer Emma Curtis Hopkins, speaking in the 1880s, said, nearly everybody tries to cover up the main purpose of their life. They tell all kinds of stories to themselves and others about what they are seeking. Often they tell that all they ask is just enough to feed and clothe and house their family. Let them tell the honest truth. What they seek is unlimited bounty. Nothing can possibly satisfy anybody short of unlimited supply. Breathe. You can apply that to love. You can apply that to health. You can apply that to creativity. You can apply that to joy. Nothing satisfies us other than unlimited flow of the divine through us. And we don't have to sit here and go, well, I shouldn't have my good because if I have too much good, then somebody else will not have enough good. The universe doesn't work like that. We're conditioned to believe it does. But it doesn't actually work that way. If I have love, does that take away from your love? If I'm more healthy than I was yesterday, does that take away from your health? No. We do that with money. Breathe. But it's really not true even there. The Unity minister, Edwene Gaines, once had one of her staff members, this is like probably 25 years ago, do a study to find out how much money there was in the world, actual printed money. And she found out, and then they divided that by the number of people in the world, and found out there is enough money in the world for every single person to have $8 million. 25 years ago. Think about that. We're raised to believe in lack. And until we interrupt the conditioned patterns of scarcity, of undeservingness, the belief that having my good deprives others of their good, or the belief that in a God that wants us to suffer in this life, to earn a greater pie in the sky when we die, we will be subject to those beliefs, consciously or unconsciously. And since those kinds of beliefs pervade our culture, even if you weren't raised in a particular religion that taught that, those beliefs still pervade our culture. And so we have to guard the gates of our mind, lest we unconsciously allow them to direct us. You know, in many Buddhist temples and Hindu temples in the East, they have what they call food dogs. Or tigers sitting outside the temple, and what they are is to wake you up, to say, pay attention when you walk in. There was a friend of mine who was studying meditation in Southeast Asia many years ago, and she was out with her meditation teacher walking in a field of grass, of tall grass, and all of a sudden the teacher goes, tiger! And she's like, where? You know, and he says, that's the attention I want you to bring to meditation. See, most of us in the West are conditioned meditation is, I'm just going to let my mind float, and I'm just going to relax, and whatever. But in Buddhism and in Hinduism in the East, they teach that meditation is paying undistractable attention, fierce attention to reality, to unconditioned reality. That's getting rid of all the beliefs, all the chatter, paying fierce attention. And so we have to do that with our minds. We have to pay attention. We have to notice what we're noticing. You know, my friend Andy Anderson has a song that says, I'm always thinking, you're always thinking, but do we ever think what we're thinking about? Do we pay attention to it? Now, often we need support from others. Yes? Because we have blind spots, and there are what? Blind to us spots. You know, people who are trained to notice what we're noticing, and who have the vision, the higher vision, who have the love, who have the courage to call us out on that when we're stuck in a cycle. You know, I've shared before about Linda Bremer, who's sitting right back there, who is at one point in time did a pattern interrupt with me when I was in the process of buying a new car, and I was chattering away about how I couldn't afford it. And she looked at me finally and said, do you want to continue to affirm that? And I'm like, oh, hell no. And therefore, it opened up a new possibility for me. That was more aligned with the spiritual truth than my belief that I wasn't and didn't have enough. Because you see, that's not really the truth of me or you. It's important to listen to others who are not caught themselves in the collective consciousness of lack and fear, because otherwise one of two things is going to happen. Either they just won't even notice that you're saying what you're saying, or they'll agree with you. Oh yeah, the economy's terrible. Oh man, this disease is going around, and so yeah, you should have it too. We should all have all that stuff, yes? They'll agree with you out of agreeing with their own conditioned limiting beliefs. And that's why we encourage working with people like practitioners who are trained, even if they're not perfect. Got it? Practitioners, that takes a little load off you. Even if they're not perfect, they're nevertheless trained to spot stinking thinking in themselves and others, to rise out of the human condition and into spiritual truth. Ernest talks about reading Torah, and he says one of the ideas he got was that the human mind alone gets sick and suffers. The divine mind alone heals. I'll say it again. The human mind alone gets sick and suffers. The divine mind alone heals. That should tell you where to put your attention. That's why when we do a spiritual mind treatment, our method of affirmative prayer, the very first step is God is. We get out of our stuff, we get out of our conditioned thinking and go, wait a minute, time out, God is. One of my teachers used to say, if it ain't true of God, it ain't true of you. Is God sick? Does God have that whatever disease? Does God not have enough? Look around at the abundant universe. Yes? Okay. Is God unloved and lonely and unacceptable? No. And if it ain't true of God, then guess what? Ain't true of me. Breathe. Breathe that in. We tend to get caught in the inertia of thought patterns. We tend to keep thinking and acting upon the same thing, our habitual thoughts, over and over and over again until something interrupts that pattern, until we recognize either through internal realization, like Karen Joyce did, or through external interruption, like me with Linda, what we've been thinking and affirming. And then we can say, up until now, I've believed this. But today, I choose something new. One of my favorite expressions of this actually comes out of a book that was written many years ago by John Randolph Price called The Abundance Book. And in it, he has a 40-day abundance program. And it starts off, he asks everybody when they start that program to start off by writing something out. And this is what he asks people to write out. And I will say it's about money, it's about abundance, okay? This day, you can apply it to anything. This day, I cease believing in visible money as my supply and my support. Notice that's a pattern interrupt. This day, I cease believing this. Yes? And I view the world of effect as it truly is, simply an outpicturing of my former beliefs. Everything in your life is an outpicturing of your former beliefs. They will be your current and future beliefs until you change them, interrupt them. I believed in the power of money, therefore I surrendered my God-given power and authority to an objectified belief. I believed in the possibility of lack, thus causing a separation in consciousness from the source of my supply. I believed in mortal man and carnal conditions, and through this faith gave man and conditions power over me. I believed in the mortal illusion created by the collective consciousness of error thoughts, and in doing so, I have limited the unlimited. And then he says, with an exclamation point after it, no more. Pattern interrupt, yes? No more. This day, I renounce my so-called humanhood and claim my divine inheritance as a being of God. This day, I acknowledge God and only God as my substance, my supply, and my support. That's a pattern interrupt. This is what I have been believing. And sometimes we have to call it out. We have to get conscious. Oh, dang, this is what I've been believing. When Linda said to me, do you want to keep affirming that? It's like, oh, dang, I've been saying this thing in my own head for years. Can't afford this, whatever it was. We don't even remember what it was that I was saying. But it got so completely collapsed in consciousness that neither one of us could remember what it was that we said, that I was saying. So part of letting go also then might be forgiveness. It might be forgiveness of ourselves. It might be forgiveness of others. It has to be the recognition that the past is the past. Yes? It's back there somewhere. We can't change it, but we can change who and how we are today in relationship to it. Those who hurt us in the past, those who hurt you in the past, cannot continue to hurt you now unless you hold on to your resentment. Take a breath. They cannot continue to hurt you now unless you hold on to your resentment. Many of you have heard me say before that I went through a period of my life where my mantra was, my mother doesn't live here anymore. Because I had to break out of that experience that I'd had growing up. We like to say principle is not bound by precedent, which is just a fancy way that means the infinite oneness, the infinite presence, the infinite beingness is not bound by what has been already coming before. It creates anew every single moment, every single moment, every single moment. And since we are the oneness, individualized, you got that right? You're this infinite presence in form. Yes? Yes. Breathe that in. Say it like you mean it. Yes. Since we are the infinite oneness individualized, we are not bound by precedent unless we choose to be. Ernest Holmes says, we all have the ability to transcend previous experiences and rise triumphant above them. But we shall never triumph over them while we persist in going through the old mental reactions. As long as I keep doing the same old feelings, experiences, thoughts over and over again, I cannot be free of them. So let today be a call to step boldly into a new life. It's a day to say, up until now, I believed in this, but I interrupt this broadcast. So our practice for this coming week is to first notice what you're noticing. Notice what you're thinking. As you go about your life, just start to pay attention. What am I thinking about this? Mary Morrissey talks about that she set up a little thing that every time she touches a handle, a cupboard handle, a door handle, or any kind of a handle, she asks herself, how am I handling this moment? Set yourself up something that reminds you, something that brings you to present. So notice what you're noticing. What habitual thought pattern has kept you playing small? What am I thinking? What am I believing? Where have I forgotten that if it ain't true of God, it ain't true of me? Now let your words free you up. So instead of I can't, say up until now I haven't been able to. But today I open to new possibilities. Are you willing to play with that? This day I accept God and only God as my source, and I interrupt the old broadcast with a message from my soul, which is free. I invite you to take that in as a spiritual practice this week. I'm going to close with a quote from Rumi, who says, we've been walking in the surf, holding our robes up, when we should be naked, diving under, deeper under. We've been walking the shore, tentatively getting into life, holding our robes up, when we should be diving fully deeper under, naked, experiencing it all. We have an affirmation. Say this with me. I free myself of the past and step boldly into my divine birthright. Let's say it again. I free myself of the past and step boldly into my divine birthright. So it is.